Picture this: cameras rolling, 150 extras dressed as first-century Jews, and Jonathan Roumie about to deliver one of Jesus's most iconic sermons. Then, suddenly, everything stops. The man portraying the Son of God can't speak a single word. What happens when an actor realizes the weight of representing divinity itself? Can human frailty coexist with portraying perfect holiness? The answers lie in understanding that true spiritual encounters always reveal our limitations, and that God's power is most evident when we acknowledge our weakness rather than pretend we're sufficient. If you enjoy content that helps you grow spiritually, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our community for more inspiration. Let's get started. March 2018 marked a turning point that would forever change how Jonathan Roumie approached his role in The Chosen. During filming of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in Season 1, Roumie found himself facing something no acting class could have prepared him for. Standing before the crowd of extras, wearing the robes of Christ, he felt a crushing realization wash over him like a tsunami. I'm saying these words that Jesus said to these people that are looking at me, and I'm there, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be here, Roumie later confessed. The sacred nature of Christ's teachings hit him with unprecedented force. These weren't just lines from a script. They were the actual words spoken by the holiest being who ever walked the earth. Physical symptoms began manifesting immediately. Sharp pains shot through his ear, his chest tightened with unexplained pressure, and his heart began racing uncontrollably. I've only had one panic attack in my life, and it started to feel like it was creeping into that, he revealed during an interview with Tucker Carlson. The sensation wasn't merely performance anxiety, it felt like an invisible force was actively trying to prevent him from speaking Christ's words. The production ground to a halt as Roumie requested an emergency break. Cast members and crew watched as their leading man struggled with what seemed like spiritual warfare in real time. Dallas Jenkins, the series creator, immediately recognized what was happening. This wasn't about memorizing lines or hitting marks. This was a human soul grappling with the impossibility of representing divine perfection. In that vulnerable moment, Jenkins approached Roumie with words that would become transformative. None of us is truly worthy. Those 5 simple words carried profound theological weight, reminding Roumie that worthiness was never the prerequisite for God's calling. The panic that had paralyzed him began to subside as he grasped a fundamental truth about divine grace, operating through human inadequacy. That moment of panic would trace its roots back decades earlier, to an extraordinary scene in a Long Island backyard where an 11-year-old boy named Jonathan Roumie hammered nails into 2 6-foot boards, painted blood on the wood, and fashioned a crown of thorns from garden reeds. After watching Robert Powell's portrayal in Jesus of Nazareth during Easter season 1985, young Roumie felt compelled to recreate the crucifixion beside his family's garage, which became his personal Golgotha. We all face moments when we feel unworthy or inadequate for the calling God has placed on our lives. In those moments, understanding how divine grace works through human weakness can transform everything. This is exactly what The Secret of Jesus' Apparitions offers, a path to clarity and peace through his revelations. This ebook goes into his prophecies and offers insight into what lies ahead. It's available for free in the pinned comment. Grab it now before the edition's gone. Standing on a cinder block to position his hands behind the nails, Roumie reenacted Christ's final hours with startling devotion for a child. His Egyptian father and Irish mother, married in the Greek Orthodox Church, never witnessed their son's backyard passion play. I don't know too many 10-year-olds that would go around doing that, Roumie later reflected. That set me up in a major way, decades before I would ever realize it, to prepare me for what I'm doing today. The path from that childhood reenactment to the chosen set proved neither straight nor easy. After graduating from the School of Visual Arts with a film degree, Roumie spent years chasing dreams that seemed perpetually out of reach. He played drums in a contemporary rock band that recorded an album and prepared for a tour, only to watch their record company go bankrupt. While his bandmate found stable employment, Roumie stubbornly pursued entertainment, moving to Los Angeles in 2009 with high hopes and depleting savings. 8 years later, those dreams had become nightmares. By May 2018, Roumie found himself $100 in overdraft with only $20 in his pocket and enough food for a single day. His credit cards were maxed out, government assistance had run dry, and no work appeared on the horizon. He had burned through every resource except one he'd never fully utilized: complete surrender to God. On a Saturday morning that would prove pivotal, Roumie knelt before his crucifix and poured out his desperation. "I literally said the words, 'I surrender, I surrender,'" he recalled. "I realized in that moment that in many other areas in my life, I had allowed God in. But when it came to my career, I thought, I know better. I got this God. I'm the actor here." The financial miracle came that very day. 4 unexpected checks arrived in his mail, covering his immediate needs. 3 months later, Dallas Jenkins called about a crowd-funded series that might run 4 episodes. Roumie had met Jenkins 4 years earlier when the director cast him as Jesus in a short film called The Two Thieves. Now, Jenkins was asking him to put the sandals back on for something bigger, though neither man could envision the global phenomenon The Chosen would become. What began as ordinary filming days soon transformed into battlegrounds where invisible forces seemed determined to prevent sacred words from being spoken. During key scenes, Roumie experienced phenomena that defied natural explanation. Sharp pains shooting through his ear without medical cause, sudden heart palpitations that arrived like clockwork during the most spiritually significant moments, and an overwhelming tightness in his chest that felt like something unseen was pressing against him. The more powerful the message, the more intense the pressure, Roumie observed. These weren't random symptoms of stage fright or exhaustion from long filming days. They manifested specifically during scenes where Christ's divine nature was most prominently displayed, as if an invisible adversary was actively trying to disrupt the portrayal of holiness itself. The pattern became unmistakable. Whenever Roumie prepared to speak Christ's most profound teachings, a strange force would push back. During the Sermon on the Mount sequence, he described feeling like something darker than ordinary stress was attempting to silence him. It didn't feel like stress. It felt like a force was trying to stop me from speaking the words of Christ, he later explained. The physical manifestations were so real that cast and crew witnessed him doubled over in pain from symptoms that had no apparent medical origin. Just as Roumie discovered that surrender was the key to his breakthrough, you too can find these life-changing spiritual insights. The free ebook is waiting in the first pinned comment, but only a few copies remain available. These supernatural encounters weren't unprecedented in the world of Jesus portrayals. Jim Caviezel, who played Christ in The Passion of the Christ, endured similar spiritual warfare during his filming experience. Caviezel was literally struck by lightning while performing the Sermon on the Mount, describing how he was lit up like a Christmas tree and knew the strike was coming 4 seconds before it happened. A 150-pound cross fell on his head, dislocating his shoulder and causing him to bite through his tongue. The blood streaming from his mouth remained in the final film. Caviezel understood these incidents weren't mere accidents. Most people don't realize that these little mistakes were miracles, he reflected. And what I've noticed is Jesus, if you're close to him, he doesn't prevent you from suffering. His closest friends are going to suffer with him. The actor experienced pneumonia, hypothermia, and constant physical pain, yet recognized these tribulations as part of the spiritual cost of portraying the Son of God. When Roumie found himself overwhelmed by these supernatural pressures, he would immediately text his spiritual director, Father Ian, who would begin praying the Rosary. Remarkably, within 15 minutes of this spiritual intervention, the overwhelming sensations would typically subside. The pattern revealed something profound. These weren't psychological manifestations, but spiritual attacks that responded directly to prayer and divine intervention, confirming the reality of the invisible war being waged around the telling of Christ's story. Roumie's experience echoed a pattern woven throughout Scripture. Whenever mortals encountered true holiness, they were immediately confronted with their own inadequacy. The prophet Isaiah provided perhaps the most vivid biblical example of this phenomenon. Standing in the temple, Isaiah witnessed the Lord high and lifted up, with seraphim crying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory." The very foundations shook at their voices, and smoke filled the temple. Isaiah's response was immediate and devastating. "Woe is me, for I am ruined. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." The Hebrew word for ruined literally meant ceasing to exist. Isaiah felt himself coming undone at the most fundamental level. In the blazing presence of absolute holiness, he became acutely aware that even his best qualities, his prophetic calling and eloquent speech, were stained with impurity. This wasn't self-deprecation or false modesty. Isaiah recognized a cosmic truth. Infinite holiness cannot coexist with finite sin. The very thing that made him a prophet, his lips, his words, seemed utterly defiled when measured against divine perfection. The man who had pronounced woes upon others now turned that same judgment inward with crushing force. Peter demonstrated this identical reaction centuries later, when Jesus filled his empty nets with miraculous abundance. After fishing all night without success, the seasoned fisherman suddenly found his boat overflowing with catch at Christ's command. But Peter's response wasn't celebration or gratitude for the financial windfall. Instead, he fell at Jesus' knees and cried, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." The miracle had revealed something far more significant than Jesus' power over nature. It exposed the divine presence dwelling within the carpenter from Nazareth. Peter, like Isaiah, instinctively understood that his human frailty couldn't withstand proximity to such holiness. The same nets that moments before represented failure now became symbols of his own unworthiness in the face of supernatural authority. When Dallas Jenkins reminded Roumie that none of us is truly worthy, it became a turning point. The same biblical truths that freed him are in the ebook mentioned in our pinned comment. Don't wait. Only a few copies left. Throughout biblical history, this pattern repeated itself. John, the beloved disciple, fell as though dead when he beheld the glorified Christ in Revelation. Moses couldn't look directly at God's face and live. Even the mighty angels covered their faces with their wings in God's presence, acknowledging their position as created beings before their Creator. These encounters reveal a fundamental truth about divine holiness. It doesn't merely highlight human inadequacy, it completely overwhelms it. When finite meets infinite, when corrupted meets incorruptible, the distance isn't measurable in degrees, but in dimensions entirely. Each of these biblical figures discovered that proximity to true holiness strips away all pretense, all self-righteousness, all illusions of personal adequacy, leaving only raw recognition of desperate need for divine grace. Dallas Jenkins's powerful words about unworthiness became the foundation for Roumie's transformation. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness," echoed through his mind, the same verse that had liberated the Apostle Paul when faced with his own thorn in the flesh. This biblical truth revolutionized Roumie's approach to the role. He no longer needed to be worthy, he simply needed to be willing. That shift from self-sufficiency to divine dependence marked a turning point. Roumie began understanding that God's strength operates most powerfully through human frailty, not despite it. The very inadequacy that had paralyzed him became the perfect condition for divine grace to manifest. Paul's revelation in 2 Corinthians 12-9 became Roumie's lifeline. Divine power reaches its fullest expression precisely when human strength reaches its end. This newfound freedom required radical restructuring of his preparation methods. "I start all of my prep for this show with prayer," Roumie explained. "Even outside of this show, prayer is just part of my life, part of the fabric of my life, every day. I couldn't get through a day without prayer." Each scene became an opportunity for spiritual alignment rather than mere performance. His scriptural preparation intensified beyond memorizing lines. "Every day, I'm either reading or listening to the Word, or listening to reflections on the Word," he shared. Passages like, "I am the way and the truth and the life," John 14:6, and "Whoever sees me sees the Father," John 14:9, became meditative anchors that helped him connect with Christ's essence rather than simply reciting dialogue. The transformation extended to his spiritual practices. Roumie developed a comprehensive prayer arsenal to combat supernatural attacks. The Divine Mercy Chaplet, the Rosary, the Angelus, and the Litany of Humility. When spiritual pressure mounted during filming, he would text his spiritual director, Father Ian, who would immediately begin interceding through prayer. These weren't mere religious rituals, but active weapons in an ongoing spiritual battle. This process of inner alignment revolutionized Roumie's understanding of his calling. "I have a responsibility to play this role as authentically as possible," he acknowledged, knowing that it will impact people in a way that only God can understand. He stopped trying to be perfect and started surrendering to being used imperfectly by a perfect God. The role ceased being about acting and became about availability, allowing himself to be a vessel through which divine love could flow. "All I can do is bring the utmost of my humanity and my intention to serve Christ, and get out of the way of the Holy Spirit," Roumie confessed. This surrender paradoxically gave him the freedom to portray Christ authentically, not through human perfection, but through divine transformation working within human limitation. Roumie's experience of God's strength through weakness mirrors principles that can revolutionize any believer's life. These insights are in the free ebook available in our first pinned comment. Claim yours now. Years after that initial breakthrough, Roumie now faces the most daunting challenge of his career, preparing for Season 6's crucifixion scenes. "It's brutal," he confessed at the 2025 K-Love Fan Awards. "This is the most difficult thing I think I've ever done. It's the most difficult season." The physical transformation has been dramatic. Observers noted his visibly thinner frame, the result of intensive training and a lot of self-sacrifice to achieve his vision of how Christ should appear during his final hours. The preparation extends far beyond physical conditioning. Roumie has been studying the Shroud of Turin, researching crucifixion techniques, and examining different source material regarding the Passion to understand what Jesus actually endured. Learning from the markings on that shroud, what the crucifixion physically looked like, and what I now have to prepare for mentally and spiritually to recreate, he explained. Meanwhile, Roumie navigates the complex reality of being recognized worldwide as the face of Jesus. Walking into St. Patrick's Cathedral for noon mass has become impossible without being swarmed by fans crying, "We just want a picture with Jesus." The line between actor and character has blurred in ways he never anticipated. Grocery stores, department stores, even secular spaces in New York and Los Angeles bring encounters with people who see him as their closest connection to the divine. The most challenging interactions come from those seeking actual healing. During one event with Pastor Greg Laurie, Roumie was approached by a mother whose paralyzed son was confined to a wheelchair. Their favorite scene was Jesus healing a paralyzed man, and the mother's implicit hope was devastating. "I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if God healed my son?" Facing her expectant gaze, Roumie could only offer, "I don't have that gift, but I'd be happy to pray with you if that's okay." If these insights resonate with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your super thanks support helps us create more content like this. Join our community and stay connected. These moments force constant recalibration between his human limitations and the divine character he portrays. "I don't feel like a responsibility to be Jesus to people," he clarifies. "I have a responsibility to play this role as authentically as possible, knowing that it will impact people in a way that only God can understand." He's become, in his words, the closest thing to the real Jesus that they probably will ever see in person. Daily life now includes hosting prayer hours on Instagram, viewed by nearly 100,000 people, partnerships with the Hallow Prayer app, and speaking at major Catholic events. Each interaction carries the weight of representing not just a character, but the central figure of Christianity itself. As filming approaches the crucifixion that will mark Jesus' death in Season 6, Roumie faces his ultimate test, not just as an actor, but as a man whose life has become inseparably intertwined with the greatest story ever told.